Good morning, it's Grania here on Wednesday the 13th of January, I think we're at already. Excuse me, so far this year I've been talking about how you can reconnect with prospects and how January is a great time to do that. And prospects and clients actually, so not necessarily completely cold calls. And how do we rekindle those sales conversations? So last week I was suggesting or challenging you really to take stock of who you wanted to get back in touch with. And one of the ways I suggested would be a good way to start is to think about those prospects, make a list and think about where they were in their buying journey. So I talked about 3 different stages. That the first stage is where they were doing their research, so they were beginning to develop their need and define the criteria and what it was they were actually looking for and who might be able to provide that. The second group of people are those who are weighing up those options and evaluating how good each solution is versus the risks that they'd be taking. And then the third group are those who are making the decision and may need to involve other people in that decision or decide on the terms, negotiate the terms of the agreement. So now you are hopefully sitting with a group or a list of 3 people in lovely neat categories, and hopefully you might have moved some of those conversations forward. But the purpose of today is to help you, if you haven't moved any of the conversations forward, is to help you think about a way that you could do that. And a hugely useful technique in sales is called framing. So literally like a frame, like a picture frame, is a good way to think about it. And it's where we set the context for the conversation that we're about to have or the questions that we're going to ask. And one of the things that makes framing so useful is that it works really well from a cold call right up to the very sort of final details of pinning down a deal. So what I'm going to talk about today is the context of reconnecting with prospects in that first stage of the buying journey using framing. So when we create a frame, effectively what we're doing, if you imagine, we are bringing that person that we're talking to into the sort of same space that we're in at that moment. And I thought the most helpful way to do this actually was to give you a few examples of what that might sound like in different sort of contexts. So not many of you, I think, run a car dealership, but we all have been in that situation. So I thought it was like one example to use. In a car dealership, if you were the salesperson, you could imagine a good way to get in touch might be to contact the person, would be to say, when we last spoke, you were considering whether to hold on to your existing car or whether to make the leap to an electric car. Do you mind me asking what you decided to do? So we've set a frame for that conversation. Another example, one close to my heart, is a sales training course. So if that's what you were selling, sales training, I might use the frame. We met last October on the session I ran on sales confidence, and you kindly gave us some great feedback on how it helped you. I'm running a new program in April this year, so I wanted to make sure you'd heard about it. But before I do that, how have you been getting on? So that's how we might frame and start that conversation. You can see it's quite natural, I would say. If you were selling, this is probably a bit more typical actually of some of the businesses in our group. If you were selling healthy lifestyle products, an example might be when you got in touch last month, you were looking for, let's start again. Lifestyle products, say you downloaded an ebook on healthy lifestyles. We're writing a new one and we would love to know what tips really resonated with you and what else we could include that would be useful for you next time round. So we're involving people in that conversation and starting it again. If, for example, you were running a delivery service, another example, a frame might sound like, when you got in touch last month, you were looking for information on the eco-credentials of our delivery service. The reason for getting in touch today is to let you know that we've been awarded a gold standard in whatever it would be for that industry. I know this was an important part of your buying decision and I would love to know how much closer that gets you to making that decision. Okay, so you can see that effectively when we're framing, what we're doing is we are thinking about the question that we really want to ask, and then we're putting it in a way that starts the conversation, but it also communicates to the person. We make it safe for them to share and reasonable for them to share, because we've shown interest. We've brought them back into the conversation that we had when we last spoke to them. We've reconnected, we've reminded them what we do, we've reminded them the conversation we have, and we've shown them that we've really listened and that we are genuinely interested in what is going on for them and how we can help. So that's what it's about. It's about starting that conversation again. So I think for you to think about, if you're at the stage of thinking, how do I start those conversations? Think about what is the question that you really, really want to ask. And then think about the context of the conversation you last had, and how do you build that context so that you can create the safe environment for that person to answer that question. I hope that helps. For me, sometimes it feels like really obvious, but I don't think it is that obvious from conversations I've had. Give it a go and try it out, and I would love to hear how you got on. Speak to you soon.